Soujirou Hinomuro is fed up with his life already. Like any local, he relocated to Tokyo once he got a job over there. Before he realized it, years passed, and he's already in his mid-30s, burned out, overworked, and underpaid, something you and I can relate to. The poor guy's even made to work during holidays without fair pay. One fateful night while he was on his way home, Soujirou was busy fiddling with his phone when he absent-mindedly crossed the road. Dazed and worked to the bone, he didn't notice the oncoming truck, so the inevitable happened. Soujirou was hit. With his consciousness slowly fading into the darkness, he suddenly heard a woman's voice. She told Soujirou that he didn't survive the collision. And in his mind, Soujirou thought people who passed disappeared. Hearing him say that made the woman chuckle. Then she proceeded to relate how Soujirou cleaned her statue one time. It was that simple act of kindness that warranted this act of kindness from the goddess. She pitied poor Soujirou, which is why she decided to intervene, telling him that she'll have him spend his next life in another world as he is. So basically, he's respawning but in a different game this time. Looking at it from that perspective, she asked Soujirou first what he wanted to do. Soujirou paused for a moment before telling her that he wanted to live a quiet life. He didn't want to relive the same boring and unfulfilling life he had just had back then. If anything, the home-cooked meals he made in the countryside during camping were the best he ever had. Looking back, Soujirou remembered how much he loved camping, doing crafts and making things, which is what he wanted to do in his next life. The goddess became even more gleeful when she heard that, thinking it must be fate that things aligned like this. With that said, she gifted him the divine artifact, craft gear. Additionally, she explains that it has 2 powers and that he can conjure it whenever he needs it. But for now, the goddess stores craft gear inside Soujirou's body, as the latter thanked her for the gift. With that, she sent him on his new world, but not before introducing herself. She is the mother goddess Anna, blessing both his body and soul to help him reach his happiness. She beamed brightly, happy that the last power left within her was given to someone like Soujirou, leaving the latter a little clueless. Just like that, Soujirou respawned, body intact and a whole new world to explore. Of course, he had to check if his body was acting as it should, and to his surprise, it felt lighter and more fluid than his last one. It's one thing to be blessed with a normal body, but a healthy one? Soujirou just knows he was that blessed, especially with how he's also been given a divine artifact. Speaking of which, Soujirou conjured craft gear. As soon as he called on the item, it appeared in his hand in a flash in the shape of a pocket knife. Upon closer inspection, it's much smaller, but it does fit pretty well in his hand. He also realized that chanting the artifact's name allows him to summon it whenever, which is very Fushiguro of him. Well, divine artifact aside, Soujirou's current concern is that he's in the middle of the wilderness. This is where he low-key thanked his hobbies, which are solo camping and leisure camping. He's got the fit, the looks, and the tools, so now it's about living the camping life. Soujirou locked in and started to assess the situation, staring at craft gear. Since this is a new world, would it be possible for divine weapons to suddenly transform into some other thing? He closed his eyes and put this theory to the test. While he's at it, he remembered what the goddess said. The second use of craft gear is tool, which turns the device into anything he could think of. No sooner did he do this than the artifact turned into a hatchet. Given the circumstances, he had to try its quality, so without further ado, he zeroed in on the nearest tree and hurled the hatchet with all his might. There was an explosive crack as soon as the tool came in contact with the tree trunk. Before he realized it, the trunk was already falling straight to his face. If he didn't shout, "Wait!" at the last minute, he would have been string beans in a minute. Just like that, the tree stopped mid-air. That's when he heard the goddess's voice as she explained the artifact's second power. It can fix objects. Unlike regular craftsmanship, where you need a workplace along with the tools and equipment, the artifact's Fix Object option allows Soujirou to build things with less paraphernalia. He just needs to use the power of his imagination. For example, when creating a birdhouse, one needs a wooden plank, a workbench, and even a hammer and nails, among many other things. According to the goddess, he can fix anything anywhere as long as he can imagine it. And yes, he can even fix time and space. In a nutshell, it's all about convenience, so even if the explanation was a little late, Soujirou forgave her for that. Now that he has a better understanding of craft gear, Soujirou fetched it and realized how it's a bit tricky to handle. With that, he resumed work, and this time he thought he'd make a staff. After all, it's one of the most convenient tools used when walking on uneven terrain. Soujirou found a nice branch with just the perfect length and began to shape it accordingly. While doing so, he realizes once again how he needed to handle craft gear with extra care. And before long, he manages to finish the majority of the staff's body. He proceeded to graft its grip, and before long, he finally finished it. Soujirou gave it a little test and found all of it to his liking, save for a little adjustment on the grip. Looking at what he has, Soujirou has a knife with an impressive cutting edge, coupled with various tools. Plus, there's also the ability to fix and disassemble at will. which he believes is enough to enable him to live in the wilderness. Now that he's done with his staff, it's time to explore Jumanji, this new world. And the first thing Soujirou needed to find was water. Humans can't live without water for 3 days. If they can't drink for a day, then dehydration would kick in really fast. He headed north, thinking how dangerous it would be to keep still in such an unfamiliar place. On the upside, he has good faith that the goddess wouldn't put him in a dangerous world. Walking around the jungle like this, it made him realize the stark difference between the wilderness and his previous corporate life. And for that alone, he felt immensely grateful because he was finally free. No sooner did he think of that than his stomach started to grumble. He is both free and hungry, which is why finding food is now included in his agenda. To his surprise, he quickly found the river, although the water looked a little too gray to be potable. Thankfully, he's not feeling thirsty yet, so he decided to focus on other Animal Crossing activities like building a shelter. Nights in the forest can get pretty chilly, so having a warm bed is a must. He decided to have his little shelter placed a little further away from the river since it can get pretty cold, then proceeded to gather the necessities. He found branches and a vine to secure the framework of his shelter, and put them into position. After that, he got more branches and leaned them against the framework's inclination before putting dry grass and leaves on top of them as protection against rain. For his bed, he got a couple of smaller cut logs and laid them inside. He covered it with leaves, and with that, his shelter was done. As he sat inside, he realized just how useful craft gear is. If he used the regular tools like he did back on Earth, it would take him hours just to cut and size the branches. He didn't expect to finish all of this in an hour. The man barely even broke a sweat. He let out a big stretch, still full of energy, when he heard a rustling noise from nearby. As soon as he turned, he saw a large rabbit with a horn protruding from its forehead. This Umbrian-looking thing but in white is roughly the size of a medium dog, and just as he was assessing whether it was friendly or not, the creature dashed straight to him using its horn. Luckily, Soujirou's got fast hands and managed to block it using his staff. He activated his craft gear and fashioned his staff to secure the rabbit's horn in it, so now the poor creature is left hanging and scrambling in midair. His camping skills came in clutch again, remembering how mountain animals can be pretty wild and feral. Remembering what just happened made Soujirou thank the goddess again before turning to the rabbit. The creature, knowing what might happen to it later, tried to pull the cutest face it could to get out of trouble. Unfortunately, Soujirou only smiled back and told the rabbit that it would be his dinner no matter what. Soujirou quickly got to work. After unaliving the creature, he drew its blood, took out the internal organs, and soaked the body in the river for cleansing. After that, he skinned it and assembled the meat. He checked if the body had any poison pouches, and fortunately there weren't any. What he did find was that the creature's heart is shaped oddly, making him wonder if the rabbit was different from a regular one, as if its large horn isn't a dead giveaway. He had just finished assembling it when he heard a rustling noise from behind again. Soujirou quickly turned and saw a black puppy with strange markings on its forehead, which is practically a variant of Fushiguro's black demon dog in JJK. Seeing how cute it was, Soujirou instantly beamed as the puppy looked at him curiously. It doesn't look like it belongs to someone, nor does it look like a stray, but he offered some of the rabbit's innards for the pup to eat. The little fellow wolfed down those innards, and that's when Soujirou noticed the bow tied to the pup's fur. Maybe this little guy belongs to someone after all. He wasn't able to take a longer look because the puppy ran off soon after. Soujirou fetched the crate containing the innards and noticed that the puppy only ate the heart. A scream from behind left him shaking, and he turned to see an elven woman standing on a tree branch. She asks him if he saw a puppy, but before Soujirou could answer, the elven lady thought he must have eaten him already. He quickly dismissed it, saying the innards were different, and pointed her in the direction where the puppy ran. Upon hearing that, she heaved a sigh of relief and thanked Soujirou before running off to find the dog. Now that he's all by himself, Soujirou couldn't believe that the day when he could see an actual elf would come, like, "My brother, you're in an isekai manga." Anyway, back to business. Soujirou got all his essentials ready. He already has a shelter, bed, food, and water, but most importantly, fire. Lighting your own fire can be pretty tricky since you need the right materials for it. Dry conifer branches and firewood are a must, and coupled with craft gear, he was able to create a bowl to create a fire. He thought of using the bow drill method to ignite a fire. As soon as he got that going, he started to boil water in a bowl made from jahi tree bark. Everything that Soujirou is currently using is sourced from the trees and other resources in the area. Time to check the water. Soujirou blew on it a little before taking a small sip. It doesn't taste weird or anything, so he should be fine probably. Next up, preparing the meat. He already had a small portion being cooked on a small stone plate. The latter he created by cutting a portion from a small boulder. Back to his dungeon meshi duties, he checked to see if the meat was cooked well on both sides before serving it on a wooden plate. After saying his thanks, he finally tried it and was surprised at how flavorful the rabbit's meat is. The meat is similar to the tenderness of a chicken, but it's more akin to duck meat. For an unseasoned meat, Soujirou couldn't help but sing praises about how delicious it is, especially since it's achieved through a series of great efforts. After he finished eating, Soujirou sat quietly by the fire. He relished the sound of burning wood and the warmth of the fire since it had been a while since he experienced such an enjoyable feeling. Since he had already eaten and his shelter was all set up, Soujirou thought he could now relax a bit. After all, one of the crucial aspects of survival is to maintain your body temperature, which he already accomplished. Although he already has the essentials, of course, it's only natural to want more. And in Soujirou's case, he was already thinking about making the proper wall and tableware. His thought process got cut off when he noticed the puppy from before appeared again. Now where was that elf from before? Since it's just him and the pup, Soujirou took him under his wing and fed the little fella some meat. He promised to find the dog's owner tomorrow morning, but for now, they decided to sleep together. The next morning, Soujirou set out to find the pup's owner, with the latter placed comfortably inside his bag. As he went along, Soujirou made sure to etch a mark as a reminder of his way back. While doing so, he couldn't help but wonder if there were other elves like her. The pup's ear perked up before it jumped down and started growling toward something. The little fella kept low, snarling at something Soujirou couldn't see. A moment later, they heard a loud screech from what he assumed was a monster. From the beast's cry alone, it doesn't look like it's a territorial dispute, which only means it must be fighting the elven lady from before. He bolted quickly toward the sound as the crashing sounds got louder and louder. At the crime scene, the elven lady from before was busy fighting a griffin with just a towel around her body. It looks like she got attacked while she was bathing, but before it could get worse, the puppy started barking to get the monster's attention. Once the monster noticed Soujirou, it flew straight to him, but the latter was prepared for its attack. He had already changed craft gear into a hammer and threw the item toward the monster's chest, as the griffin was knocked out after crashing into a tree. Once again, Soujirou's reminded how dangerous craft gear is, but he couldn't lament over it for too long. He heard the familiar voice and turned to see the elven woman praising him for taking down the griffin with just one hit. Looking at her, Soujirou low-key froze in place because he just got whiplashed by the elven lady's sexy no jutsu, but he tried to play it cool. She made small talk, apologizing for her fit because she just got attacked by the monster while bathing. Soujirou apologized too, saying he didn't mean to interrupt and that he's just a mere human. Upon hearing that, she points out that no human can do what he just did to the griffin. But before they could talk it over, Soujirou handed her his clothes as cover. She took his offer and used it to cover herself while explaining how she had a hard time fighting off the griffin with just a short sword. She promised to pay him back, but Soujirou told her that she shouldn't worry given how the little black pup kept him warm last night. The elven lady explained that she found the pup after it was abandoned by its parents, but who knew she'd be the one who ended up getting saved instead. With that, she finally introduced herself as Misty, a high elf living in the sacred forest of God's tree. Soujirou did likewise, saying he just got to the forest yesterday. Fast forward to later, Misty finally changed to proper clothing, even fishing for compliments from Soujirou. Of course, our guy is pretty honest and upfront, which left Misty feeling giddy. Now to more important problems. Misty's belongings were ransacked by other demons, leaving her with only clothes to spare. Even her bow was taken, much to her frustration, so the ever-gentlemanly Soujirou offered to take her to a village nearby, if there was one. When she heard his suggestion, Misty wasn't too keen on doing so, explaining that the village is pretty far away from them. Besides, she's been living alone in this forest for the last decade, leaving Soujirou confused. Is there some kind of history behind that? She briefly explained that she left the village a long time ago and you may call it pettiness, but she's living in the forest because she's being stubborn. The Divine Tree Forest is blessed by the elven ancestors, even if their descendants, Misty's people, can no longer live there. At the moment, only the creatures and the trees are the living things in the forest. Misty took it upon herself to find ways to utilize the place. Given how he's only a day old at the place, Soujirou asked why the forest was untouched for many years, leaving Misty shocked. Did he really not know? Instead of explaining, Misty drew her blade and tried etching at the tree. She showed him how the bark was as hard as stone. Plus, the monsters and plants in the area are way too strong. According to her, the ancestors of the forest created the place because they kept losing the treasures used to control their struggles. In reply, Soujirou pulled out craft gear to try his hand at the bark. The blade pierced through the trunk just like a marshmallow. Not one to lose, Misty saw it as a challenge and tried stabbing the trunk harder, pushing in way too much force than necessary. But she couldn't even push her blade to the hilt. In the end, she caved in and admitted defeat. For his part, Soujirou explained that he's reliant on the tool in his hand, explaining that it was a divine artifact. After explaining, Misty bowed again, showing more respect. not knowing that she was actually referring to the sacred one all along. Of course, Soujirou didn't want to be referred to as such, and told her she should continue to speak normally. But who knew the artifact was much more valuable than he originally thought? Anyway, Misty offered to fetch him salt since there is some stock left at the hidden warehouse. Sure, salt is a must in every cuisine, but Soujirou didn't want Misty to go through all that trouble for him. She insisted, saying that she's a woman who keeps her promises and she owes him a lot already. Before he could contest it, Misty went ahead to fetch salt, leaving Soujirou with the pup behind again. Even though Misty ran into a troublesome predicament, Soujirou found it admirable that she took it all in stride, a sentiment echoed by the goddess. With that, he decided to cook food for her as thanks and got his craft gear ready. While Misty was busy gathering salt, Soujirou also busied himself gathering food for their shared meal. He caught the same rabbit from before, and this time he also fetched a few wild greens that looked the same as in his previous world, hoping that they wouldn't give them an upset stomach. To be fair, he did try them on yesterday by placing them against his skin and chewing them for a bit to see if they're edible or not. A moment later, Misty returned with a bag of salt, and she was surprised to see Soujirou cooking. She handed him the rock salt, apologizing that it may not be enough, but he accepted it most graciously. To make up for it, she offered to help out in any way she could, though she also gave a heads up that she could only do limited magic and fight with a short sword. Well, couldn't she just buy the items in town? According to her, it's not possible since she doesn't have any money. And to make matters worse, she also lost the materials for trade. She could only sigh and admit how hard it would be to go through all of that, especially since she has the little one to take care of too. Soujirou was more than happy to be in charge. Besides, he likes dogs too. But more importantly, Misty was curious about the meal he was cooking. Soujirou patiently explained the process of taking the broth, extracting it from the rabbit's meat and spine. Although it's good, he couldn't help but wish he had some dashi for that extra flavor, a concept that's foreign to Misty. She was happy enough with the huge rabbit he caught as their meal, excited to eat it. This time, Soujirou couldn't help but ask her how she would eat the rabbit if he weren't there. She blatantly told him that she'd just skin and roast the rabbit as it is, but it would be nice if they had some traditional spices. When he heard that, Soujirou immediately thought of McCormick and other condiments. Well, it's no use mulling over things they don't have. So he urged Misty to play with the pup while he finished his cooking. At the end of the day, Soujirou couldn't give up on his taste buds as expected from a man raised on Food Wars. After some time, he finally finished cooking their meal, which consisted of rabbit grass soup and grilled rabbit tenderloin meat. Upon tasting the soup, Misty couldn't help but beam at how delicious it was, just as Soujirou quietly savored his. Compared to yesterday, today's rabbit meat is more tender and delicious. After eating, Misty tells him that he should name the pup since she believes it would be great if the little fella could receive a sacred name. Soujirou decided to name the pup Matsukaze after one of the famous war horses that belonged to the samurai lord Toshimasu Maeda. Misty doesn't have to know that he named the pup after a famous anecdote about the samurai lord while he was in the bath. Misty's just happy that Matsukaze has a name now, while Soujirou tries to divert the attention by asking if they could scavenge the griffin's body for resources. She tells him that the creature's meat is edible, but it's also terrible. However, they could use the griffin's claws and the mass stone. It's a stone formed in the body of a magical beast that became strong. It's usually located in the meat pouch right next to the heart, which also makes it a vital spot. Misty tells him that they should collect it because it's considered valuable, though she's not getting any of their hopes up. They headed straight to the griffin's body and retrieved the mass stone. Just as Misty expected, the creature's mass stone is shattered due to the force Soujirou used earlier. This time he made a mental note to aim for the creature's head to keep the mass stone intact. But Misty wasn't too bummed out. If anything, he warns him that he should be careful since some creatures are pretty strong. Since the griffin's mass stone is all shattered up, she asks him if he could give it to Matsukaze instead, which Soujirou agrees to. She explains that even if Matsukaze is still small, the pup is still a demon beast, which is why it needs to absorb more magic before it can grow strong. Well, that explains why the little fella was eating the rabbit's organs the first time they met. Anyway, they also scavenged the griffin's hook claws. According to Misty, these have purification properties. If they put them in drinking water, it won't upset the stomach. Plus, it also stimulates wound healing and is a great food preservative. Soujirou only meant to ask for half of the hook claws, but Misty insists that he take them all. On his part, Soujirou thinks that if he splits them in half, then they may have some use for it later. Misty agreed easily, and since she was already at it, Misty asked if she could set up her base near Soujirou's. For one, Matsukaze had already grown attached to him, so it would be ideal to live near each other. Soujirou hesitated, but she did have a point. It would feel lonely without Matsukaze and Misty helping him out a lot. As if she read his thoughts, Misty went ahead and told him that if she were in Soujirou's shoes, she'd feel much better if there were someone by her side. After all, there are a lot of surprising things in a foreign world, so it would be nice to have someone to rely on. Soujirou couldn't help but break into a laugh at what she said. But there was some truth in there after all. He did feel surprised the first time they met. It's his first time meeting an elf after all. She even recreated their meeting, but with more exaggeration this time, earning another laugh from Soujirou. Speaking of which, it's been so long since he was able to laugh wholeheartedly like this. Misty beams at it, saying it would be better to have someone like her by his side. Her smiling face just made him realize again that he really was reborn. Everything happened so fast that he finds it hard to keep up sometimes, but looking at Misty now, he finds relief. With that, he tells her that he should be the one asking her to get along with him, and with that, the three decided to live together. Since Misty's place is a ramshackle shack because of the monster's attacks, and Soujirou has no attachment to his original place, the two decided to relocate to a better location. Once they settled on a place, both of them did their thing, with Misty setting up the monster repellent and Soujirou offering to build a new house for her. She's a little taken aback, given how it's not really a problem for her to build another house, but Soujirou's already in his fix-it-Felix mode, adding that he wanted to get more used to craft gear. Since he was insistent, Misty left him to it. With Misty gone, he also started on his task, beginning with the site preparation. After digging the ground, he refilled it, leveled it, and tamped it down to level the ground. Once that was settled, he moved on to the framework and started working on the tree trunks. He learned from his first day how cutting it hastily could cause the trunk to fall flat on top of him, which is why he took extra care to cut the trunk at an angle. He repeated this process all throughout, and before long, Soujirou already had a pile of logs ready just as Misty returned from casting her monster repellent spell. Of course, she was amazed by how Soujirou worked it all out quickly, but the latter remained humble and pointed out that she's the real magician between the two of them. Given how Soujirou accomplished so much more than she did, Misty asked if she could help with other things, so Soujirou asked if she could help carry the logs back to their place. Similar to how he built his first shelter, he created the framework of the new structure using timber logs. This time, he opted for a four-walled building with a lean-to roof design. For the roof, he used tree bark cut into strips as protection against rain and other elements, fully enclosing the newly built structure. The only downside to the new house is that it's too dark inside. Fortunately for him, Misty has magic, illuminating the room with her light orb. Soujirou looks forlorn, hoping he also has a magic skill of some sort, but the elven noble tells him that she could barely sense any magical power from him, which kind of makes him a variant of Astadot. But back to his hut building, Soujirou cut off a portion of the wall to serve as a door and proceeded to create a fireplace. By doing so, they can use it as a heater and even allow them to cook without stepping outside of the building. He quickly moved on to digging the trenches around the house so they could have a simple canal where rainwater could flow. After that, he decided to take a short break with Matsukaze, where they sat near the riverbed. They were joined shortly by Misty, telling Soujirou that the soil in the area can be used as building material. After that, she sat a little too close for comfort to Soujirou. After a moment's silence, she started flailing around, commenting that she could only help with the gathering of materials to make the house sturdier. Soujirou, on the other hand, feels a little envious that she could use magic, which he thinks is much cooler. When she heard that, Misty told her that he shouldn't speak lightly of magic. In his defense, magic is pretty handy, there's no smoke or fire, and it's convenient too. As he mulled over this thought, Misty went on rambling about how fun it must be to make your ideas tangible, and even more fun because Soujirou's there with her. She even revealed how she had never seen a shovel before, mistaking it for a scoop, so Soujirou had to explain the difference between the two. Once their break is over, they proceed to use the soil from the riverbed as wall putty and add a few more building materials to make it sturdier. They coat the outer walls with the combined putty to prevent drafts from coming inside their space. Finally, they used a bark sheet as a substitute for the door, and voila! They now have a new shelter. Misty is amazed again at how they were able to accomplish such a feat in a day, finding it hard to believe that she gets to live there. On his part, Soujirou thinks he fell short because he just created a make-do bed using a bundle of dried grass and tree bark. Still, he promised to create a better bed tomorrow, earning a teasing from Misty. They may be in a different world now, but even Misty knows a man particular about his bed has been to a lot of brothels, much to Soujirou's embarrassment. But to be clear, it's not like that at all. Fast forward to later that night, Misty goes over to Soujirou's house, informing him about how she'll be turning off the lights once she's asleep. With that, she asks if he wants his off too, but Soujirou says he'll be staying up longer since he's nearly done with his self-project. This piqued Misty's curiosity, asking him what he was making, just as Soujirou handed him a sculpted figurine of the goddess. He couldn't remember her face, so he could only sculpt with the memory of her voice guiding his hand. Misty's sure the goddess would appreciate it and asked what her name was. Soujirou told him that it's Anna and that she was the mother goddess, the progenitor of the gods. The name was unfamiliar to Misty, but maybe the older elves know about her. Just as Soujirou clutched the figure tightly, he remembers the goddess telling him that he was the last one. He feels his unworthiness creeping in, since the goddess could have sent someone else with more ambition into this world, unlike him, who has a modest wish. Misty assured him that the goddess made the right choice because she opted for a man filled with kindness over fame and ambition. Someone like Misty, who has been living all her life clinging to her beliefs, is proof that taking pride in your morals is a good thing. In hindsight, one could consider it a strength. When he heard all of this, Soujirou felt a little more secure with himself, just as Misty assured him that the goddess probably liked someone like him. He got up and set the small sculpture on a small elevated altar, just as the two of them finally bade each other good night. Once Misty was again, Soujirou stared at the figurine again, thinking of his fervent wish of eating delicious food in a place where he could enjoy it best before he died. He thanked the goddess again, and made a note to make their campsite better tomorrow. Little did he know Soujirou would be facing one of the hardest questions in his life. It comes in the form of a skimpy-clad Misty, asking him if he wants to take a bath together. But before that, he will face a challenging wake-up call, something warm and wet that got him up in a shock. Misty was already up and stretching, greeting a sloppy-faced Soujirou with a good morning. From the looks of it, she already knew Matsukaze went lick-a-tongue on his face that morning. He went straight to their water reserve to have a drink of water, surprised that it was as clear as day. What do you know, the griffin's hook claws really have purifying properties. Soujirou was mumbling to himself about how he wanted to wash up using this water. Misty overheard him, so she excitedly asked if he wanted to bathe together. Poor Soujirou choked on his water and had to ask again if she was being serious, and apparently she is. Because of his hesitation, she had to ask if he's an occasional bather, which he obviously denied, saying he bathes daily. So great. With that, Misty headed first, but not before explaining the logic behind bathing together. You see, it's because while one of them washes, the other can stand guard and watch out for incoming monsters. It's a pretty effective countermeasure against monsters, and hearing her explanation made a lot of sense. Besides, she has faith in Soujirou too, which is why she invited him in the first place. Misty was the first one to go in, washing herself with a short towel wrapped around her body. Soujirou stood guard from afar, but he could see some pretty telling details about Misty's body. After a while, Misty approached him and told him that she was done. She handed him the towel he used, telling Soujirou that she would take it from there. Wait, is this the same towel she used as a bathrobe from before? Misty told him that it is, since it's the only available towel. But his mind's pretty hung up on the fact that this thin piece of cloth was just around Misty's body moments earlier. He dropped those thoughts soon after seeing Misty use her magic to dry her hair. Heck, it can even be used to dry clothes. Before she offered to do something ridiculous, Soujirou headed to the river and spent a quiet time bathing. After the two finally finished washing up, they had a simple breakfast courtesy of Soujirou. While eating, Misty asks what their agenda is for the day, with Soujirou saying he'll be making furniture and windows. He's more focused on craftsmanship, so he asks Misty to take care of hunting, something she's more than happy to do, especially since she's been meaning to start training Matsukaze too. Soujirou plans to start with making a table and chair, but to do so, he needs to make a table for the table first. He cut two thin boards and hollowed out a panel on each side to make them lighter. In the middle, he cut out a channel so he could interlock the boards together and create an X shape. With that, he got himself a cross stage and used a ceiling board as the tabletop. Looking at the house's plan, he started making mental notes for the placements of windows, chairs, and even the bed. At times like these, he couldn't help but miss a good old pen and paper. But you have to make do with what you have. So Soujirou continued his furniture making until he finished a dining table set. Now they can finally eat a civilized meal. As if on cue, Misty returned with a new beast in tow. She got Butterfree this time. She happily shows off the Silkimos, much to Soujirou's shock. What's even more shocking is that this spirit beast can communicate with Soujirou somewhat without speaking. Spirit beasts are different from regular animals and living things since they're believed to come from the fairy realm. The Misty translates on behalf of the Silkimos as she relates how the spirit beast suddenly appeared and floated on Sou's roof before expressing its intention to live with them. What's even more curious is that the spirit beast cannot talk, but its intentions can still get through, which makes it possible for Misty to understand it. Silkimos flew to the newly built table and activated its power, conjuring a beautiful cloth out of thin air and offering it to Soujirou. The creature offers to create cloth for Soujirou in exchange for allowing it to live with them. Of course, he was more than happy to welcome Silkimos into their growing brood. What's more, it even looks like he's starting to understand it too. Both Soujirou and Misty doted on the spirit beast until Matsukaze started snarling, annoyed at the newest family member. Soujirou sensed the growing tension, so he tried to get on the pup's good side, ruffling its fur just as Misty asked what the spirit beast's name should be. He thought they should call it Musubi, after the silkworm god. since the spirit beast also looks like a silkworm moth. The four of them gathered at the table, with Soujirou failing to realize how he had made one of the biggest mistakes in his new life. Soujirou revels at how proud he was of the chair and table he just made, which is not bad for a first-timer. Now they can have a proper meal so he can finally sit back and relax, or not. He quickly got up and slammed both hands on the table, startling Misty and poor Musubi. This prompted her to ask if something was wrong. Soujirou told her that he needed to do something quickly and pulled a quick DIY on his workbench, piquing Misty's and Musubi's interest even more. On the other hand, we've got Soujirou, who's locked in on whatever he's building right now. He couldn't believe he forgot to make this one first. He's got his priorities messed up. Thankfully, Craft Gear cut his work time, so after getting all the components ready, he just needed to assemble them and prep the area. First things first, digging a deep and wide hole. After this, he set the foundation stones and laid the lumber planks on top before assembling the walls. Since he's pressed for time, he just did a makeshift loo, a simple structure that's assembled easily. On the inside, he cut a small hole in the floor and installed a cylindrical log-shaped object like a toilet bowl, complete with a seat and an openable lid. Then he got some leaves, filled the basin with water, along with the griffin's hook claws, installed the door, and it's done. He successfully constructed an outhouse to address their sanitary needs. Looking at his latest accomplishment now, Soujirou couldn't believe that he had gotten his priorities wrong. Although it was just a temporary fix, he couldn't help but wonder how they'll work out how to take care of their waste. But that's a problem for another day. Now Soujirou decided to test it out, and he couldn't be happier about this moment of peace and privacy. Seeing that it worked pretty well, he went and shared the good news with Misty, who also came to check their newly built outhouse. Seeing the structure was so put together in such a short time, even she was starting to worry that Soujirou was overdoing it, but it's all in a good day's work. The next day, their growing brood saw a new addition to the group. Musubi came flying, carrying Sandslash with them. The little fella stood on its hind legs, but all Soujirou could think about was that he was actually seeing an armadillo. Suddenly, it started flailing around, but of course, Soujirou couldn't understand what it was trying to say for the life of him. Thankfully, Misty came rushing over, overjoyed, and telling him that legendary creatures often flock around Soujirou. This one is a spirit beast called Riddles. It makes good soil and is pretty handy when it comes to fieldwork. Looking at the creature, he asks if the spirit beast can be called Yukatama, named after the god of fertility. The latter turns to Misty and seems to tell her something. She translates for the beast, saying that the latter wants to take care of the plants and uses the soiled waste to care for the land. Soujirou quickly picked up that the beast wanted to use it as compost. Now that it's settled, Sojirou's only concern is what to feed them. He knows Musubi likes rice with leaves and salt water, but what about this guy? Misty suggests they feed him with wood, water, and fruits. There are a lot of strawberries and other wild fruits in the forest, as well as wood, obviously. Food and lodging aside, Soujirou and the god of fertility went straight to work. The first thing they needed to do was to dig up the tree stumps. If they only had an excavator, they would have accomplished all of that easily. But because he's in a different world, manual labor is key. One of the most important parts of digging out tree stumps is to cut off the roots, so it's a lot of digging and cutting, which can be pretty tiring. This was also the very reason why he had been putting off this task for a while now. Well, at least he had Craft Gear with him, so he's pretty sure the majority of the work will be cut in half. And what do you know? Craft Gear really delivered. The item changed into a chain block, and even without a tripod, it suspended itself mid-air. All Soujirou needed to do was attach the hook to the wood stump and pull it out. Just like that, he started pulling tree stumps one after the other, and before long he had cleared the area. Now it was the fertility god's turn. Soujirou told the spirit beast that he wanted a vegetable garden in the area, and the latter started tilling the soil shortly while he continued making pieces of furniture. After a little while, Soujirou took a break to check on Yukatama. To his shock, the creature had already finished tilling the whole field, so it's ready for planting. He found the little guy busy shredding a wood scrap and thanked him for a job well done. Up next, Soujirou gave Musubi fur to weave clothes. For Yukatama, he gave the spirit beast internal organs and bones so that the former could use them as fertilizer. Matsukaze curiously approached Yukatama, seeing that the spirit beast had a large bone in its hand. Before long, the three creatures started playing together. Looking at them like this, he couldn't help but ask Misty why rare spirit beasts have been appearing in his home. To this, she told him that it must be because they want to bask in Soujou's divine aura. Because he made a small figurine of the goddess, it's only natural that divine energy will be emitted from there, which attracts the likes of spirit beasts. That's a pretty worrying thought, but Misty assured him that it's a good thing. Besides, the first time they met was due to a rare spirit beast as well, so he should take it as a good sign. He felt assured hearing her say that, so in reply, Soujirou told her that being with Misty makes him happy. That got the elven woman all flustered and blushing. not knowing that he sees her as good company since it tastes better to eat together. Speaking of eating, Misty brought fresh meat that day in the form of a giant boar. It seems that there really was some truth behind what she said back then, that a series of good things keep happening around Soujirou and in this world. Meanwhile, at the Adventurers Guild, a cloaked figure approaches the concierge. After presenting their identification card, the concierge pales once she realizes who she was talking to. Iono of the Black Sea. Every pair of eyes turned to them as the adventurers started whispering about Iono. How could someone so scrawny be the notorious Iono? Wasn't he a royal court magician? The concierge asks Iono what they were doing there, and as it turns out, he's actually a she, and she wants to go to the Divine Tree Forest. This is bad. It's only a matter of time before Soujirou's salt runs out. Looking at the pebble-sized salt in his hand, he asks Misty where she gets the salt from. The elven noble replies that she got it at the human town downstream, and since they're running low on it, Misty suggests they should also gather other goods while they're at it. If they could sell all the materials they gathered while heading to town, they could even buy other stuff like ink or dye. At the mention of such, it was more than enough to get Soujirou on board. In fact, Misty had never seen him this excited until now. With that, they decided to head to town along with Musubi, leaving Matsukaze and Ukatama behind. Misty tells him that the journey to the nearest town would take them 3 days, since they'll be going on foot. If it were up to Misty alone, she could travel much faster than the average human, but suddenly her ears picked up something, thus cutting their conversation short. She quickly told Soujirou that something was approaching, pointing him in the direction of the sound. Not a moment later, a horned rabbit appeared and went straight to Soujirou. Lucky for them, the creature didn't get to reach Soujirou because Musubi intervened and countered the former before it could attack. Once again, the two are reminded that spirit beasts are pretty strong even though they're so fluffy. This was one of the main challenges of heading to town. The possibility of monster attacks is always high. Lucky for Soujirou, he has Misty, who can detect a monster's presence from afar so they won't be ambushed easily. Be that as it may, exercising utmost caution is a must, since they could still be attacked in groups, which happened a lot of times during their journey. They managed to fend off each monster attack until they met the biggest one yet, a two-headed giant serpent called the Koshi Saju. The two got into position. Soujirou became the decoy while Misty took care of one of the heads. She chopped it off in one fell swoop, then incinerated its head. The other head immediately lunged at her, only for Soujirou to take care of it with a one-hit attack. As he walked over to retrieve craft gear, the snake's body recoiled and almost struck him. Fortunately, Soujirou blocked it using his walking staff and used it to hold the tail down. The snake stopped struggling after getting its body and tail pinned down. Bless Misty for warning him earlier that the snake's body can still move even after its heads are severed. Speaking of Misty, she quickly checked up on Soujirou as soon as she got down. But more importantly, she needed him to take down one of the snakeheads because it was about to regenerate. After crushing it with his craft gear, they finally defeated the giant snake for good. Misty got all giddy because they managed to take down the Kisho Saju without injuries and by just attacking its head. In his mind, Soujirou wasn't feeling too celebratory since he kept on wondering if there were other ways to take it down apart from tearing it to pieces. Once again, he felt grateful for how handy craft gear was. The real reason why Misty was on high is because they got an undamaged magic stone and a high-priced gall. Musubi came in time carrying their bags as they scavenged the creature's remains for things they could sell. After scavenging, they went on their way, got attacked by another monster, and then settled in for the day. Soujirou hung his hammock, courtesy of Musubi, in between two trees and was already lying down when Misty called out to him about dinner. Right, dinner, they can't forget about that one. Tonight's menu is roasted snake and herb soup. It smells a bit funky, but the meal was still delicious. While eating, Misty told Soujirou that he would make a wonderful adventurer given their many accomplishments in the past few days. Soujirou wasn't too keen on the idea, especially since he just wants to live a peaceful and quiet life. Besides, all of that was only possible because of the goddess's blessings. The following morning, they resumed their journey, but not before Misty said that they should be seeing a trail soon that leads to the village. It's now the third day since they left their base. Soujirou finds that the air in the forest seems to have shifted, and it's because the area they're walking over now is much closer to an average forest. Be that as it may, the magical energy there is still quite dense. So many magical creatures live in the area, much to the humans' struggle. Usually, Misty and the humans would employ the help of soldiers to clear the areas of any unwanted monsters, which pretty much ends up in battle most of the time. Some of the creatures may be small, but since they have magic, they're quite troublesome to handle. This prompted Soujirou to ask a question. If they're magical beasts, does that mean they also have magical stones? Misty replied that only bigger and stronger creatures have magic stones. Plus, they usually need a brigade or a large number of soldiers to take one mighty magical creature down. Because of the danger, the salary for such a job is pretty high. After a beat, they reach the trail leading to the human village called Brown Wolves. The guards at the gate were surprised to see Misty. It was evident they didn't expect the elven noble, and even more so that she brought company with her. Misty briefly introduced Soujirou as her companion, so the guard didn't ask for much except the toll tax. Soujirou readily paid the man, and as they crossed the gate he looked back and noticed the guard smirking at him. What was that? Now we move on to Brown Wolves Town. This small village offers a variety of products that they sourced from the Divine Tree Forest. As they walked around, Soujirou noticed that it's a pretty peaceful place, while Misty shared that she's pretty much a local because of how she's been visiting Brown Wolves for the last 2 decades. Speaking of familiar, she remembers the gate guard back when he was just a kid, and now he's already a grown adult. It may not look it, but Misty looks much older than many, but what disturbs him the most is the look the guard showed him earlier. Well, no use mulling over that because they have now reached Misty's usual trading house. They hadn't even been standing long outside when a burly man came out stomping and fuming, rambling about the store owner. That's when he finally noticed Soujirou. The man leaned closer, surprised to see an unfamiliar face. He asked Soujirou if he had any business with the store. Before he could answer, Misty chimed in and asked the man if he had just gotten into another fight. Seeing her made the mad do a double take between Soujirou and Misty. Was he with her? That was more than enough pleasantries for the man, so he hurriedly ran off after giving Soujirou a few pats. Right then, an older and thin man emerged from the store apologizing for his noisy guest's behavior. He turns to Misty, commenting on how she visited way earlier than her usual schedule. In reply, Misty told him that some things had happened, which is why they ended up where they are now. When the older man noticed Soujirou, he had the same reaction as the burly man. He couldn't believe an elf brought a man along with her. It's unheard of in the last 20 years. The older man was quick to regain his composure, introducing himself as Doraro, the head of the trade association. After their introductions, Doraro leaned closer to Soujirou, asking him what his relationship with Misty was. Depending on his answer, he might even give Soujirou special treatment, you know? Misty called him out, so now the older man grumpily invited them inside his establishment to see what they had to offer. They may have started with a tense situation, but Soujirou was happy enough by the end of their transaction. The majority of the talking was done by Misty, so he's just happy he got what he came in for, including seasonings and a lot of cookware. He was still relishing in his new items when the burly man from before suddenly appeared on his side. The latter introduced himself as Sidek and asked how their transaction with Doraro went. Soujirou was more than happy to entertain him, but Sedek was more curious about some other thing. Was Soujirou living in the Divine Forest? Soujirou said so, which made Sidek even more curious. You see, the Divine Forest is pretty much untouchable, so how was Soujirou living there? The trees are too tough to cut down and the place is swarming with monsters to boot. Without missing a beat, Soujirou simply told him that he lives normally, as if that answered all of Sidek's questions. Sidek also knows Soujirou's not a charcoal seller from appearance alone, so the latter explains that he sells materials from magic stones and magic beasts. From this, Sidek deduced that Soujirou was an adventurer, thus warning him that the most dangerous magician had just arrived in the area. This magician's appearance caused an uproar in their small town, especially when they heard the magician was headed to the Divine Forest. Since Soujirou said he lived there, Sidek just wanted to give a little warning to the guy. If he ever came across a problem, Soujirou should just head straight to the guild. Finally, the older man had one final question for Soujirou. What does he plan to do in the Divine Forest? With a smile, Soujirou said he just wants to cook and eat delicious food. The latter seemed pleased with his answer, and as if on cue, Misty appeared and called out to Soujirou. When the latter turned, Sidek was nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, back at Doraro's building, the older man has his brows knitted together in worry. He was mumbling about how the line separating the mundane world is progressing pretty quickly, given how Misty returned soon with a human company. Just then, Sedek came busting through the door, asking the older man why he wanted his advice. Doraro side-eyed Sidek as he revealed that the latter is actually the town's viscount. Sidek only beamed. He seemed to relish the fact that Doraro sought his counsel. As much as he's reluctant to do so, Doraro had no other choice because it involved what the elven noble entrusted to him earlier. Apparently, Misty had entrusted him with the gall of the Great Serpent of the Forest. It's a large and high-quality magic stone that won't sell easily. This item is also believed to be a cure for all kinds of poison, which makes it valuable. The Great Serpent is a creature you can't kill easily. Many night expeditions have tried and failed. There's also Doraro's concern that he needs to set a price for the gall that matches its worth, or else it won't be profitable. This puts Doraro in a bind, leaving him frustrated that for a valuable material like the gall of the Great Serpent, Soujirou only wanted sugar, cookware, and other seasonings. The math doesn't add up, and if we look at it simply, Doraro is indebted to Soujirou, which frustrates the older man. For someone as old as him, Doraro couldn't believe he would be indebted to someone. and Misty even held him accountable for it for the next 100 years. As for Sidek, he's more impressed that Soujirou managed to build a connection with Misty and force the village merchant to be indebted to them. The sudden appearance of Misty and the increase in things to buy and sell made Dotaro wonder if the two were finding ways to develop the divine forest. Sidek's not too sure, but he's concerned that the two were able to bring such a large magic stone. This could also be a telling sign that Misty and Soujirou are pretty powerful, even though the latter doesn't look like it. He's still bothered by the fact that Soujirou told him how he cut trees in the divine forest like any normal person, as if anything's normal in that forest. On another note, there was also the arrival of the magician the other day. From what Doraro heard, the magician has the power to swallow more than a ship's cargo. The arrival of Iono of the Black Sea in their area just made Sidek wonder what the magician plans to do. Well, they'll cross that bridge when they get there, but for now, Doraro asks Sidek for help in doing the inventory for the items Misty and Soujirou bought. Meanwhile, Misty and Soujirou are carefree as ever, not knowing they're stressing Doraro terribly. Right now, Misty's concern is acquiring the rock salt so Soujirou can head home earlier. The latter feels bad for not being able to accompany Misty, but what can he do? His load is already overloaded, which is why they agreed that he and Musubi would head back first. As they went their separate ways, Soujirou told Musubi that they needed to stop somewhere else, asking the Silkimos to guide him to the location. Unknown to them, Iono of the Black Sea had just arrived at Soujirou's previous shelter with a sinister smile plastered on her face. But back to Soujirou, he wanted to return to his previous shelter because of the craft gear's power. Since the shelter contains craft gear's power, there's a chance that it will remain there forever, unless he dismantles it. Leaving an item with such immense power could be dangerous, which is why he's set on going back to take the shelter apart. After traveling for 2 days, Soujirou and Musubi eventually reached the first shelter and found it still intact. Although he only spent a day in it, Soujirou felt an attachment to the place. He was about to start dismantling it when he realized the inside of the lean-to shelter was unbelievably dark, like staring at the abyss. Before the abyss could stare back at him, Musubi quickly pulled Soujirou away from it, sensing the imminent danger inside. But not a moment later, Soujirou felt a presence from behind him and saw a large, huffing demon bear. The latter lunged towards Soujirou, so he had already changed craft gear into a mallet, getting ready to strike it down. But before the beast and Soujirou could come into contact, a foreign voice echoed just as a pale hand emerged from the darkness of his shelter. Suddenly, giant tentacles engulfed the monster bear just as Iono of the Black Sea finally showed herself. But her aura got ruined when Soujirou smacked the bear and tore it, along with the dark tentacles, into smithereens like Saitama's iconic one-punch kill. He felt a little bad for creating a mess just as the bear's severed head plopped to the ground. That's when Soujirou noticed a dainty thing hanging from the beast's mouth, a pair of panties. But wait, didn't someone emerge from the dark shelter just a minute ago? In a shaking voice, Iono called out that there's no one there, which just gave her away. Musubi went ahead and used her silk in the direction of Iono's voice. The latter cried out in disgust just as the silky moss dragged her out of the shelter, pulling Iono upside down. Soujirou was more caught up with the fact that she's wearing a Japanese student's regular sailor uniform, shocked as to why someone like her is in this world. That, and he also finally knew who the owner of those torn panties was. The girl was shaken to the core by what happened, while Soujirou apologized for Musubi's rudeness. He tried to reach out to her by introducing himself, but Ione only retreated further inside the tent. After a beat or two, she finally introduced herself as Ichino Chigusa, with the two of them out battling their apologies afterward. She felt so embarrassed showing Soujirou that side of her that she wanted to jump in front of a speeding train. A thought Soujirou immediately cut off. But wait, she knows trains? Come to think of it, her name and even her attire don't seem to fit into this world. Chigusa explains that she's Japanese and pretty anxious about a lot of stuff, so Soujirou should just go ahead and call her casually. She was already a panicking mess, so it took a while for Soujirou to calm her down. When she did, he finally shared that he's also Japanese and considered different in their world. That was enough for Chigusa to come out of her shell, sharing that even though she looked like that, she's been living in their world for a while now, 4 years to be exact. Chigusa explains that people like them, otherworlders, are extremely rare. She may be sporting a Japanese uniform, but Chigusa's not even sure if she graduated. Besides, in this world, aging is pretty slow, so even if she looks like a kid, she's a bit older than she looks. Now that she has gotten more confident, Chigusa continues to share how she can also use cheat-level magic as a D-rank adventurer. But Soujirou is more curious about how she ended up inside the shelter he built. Hearing him say that aloud just made Chigusa pull back further. So this older brother is really the one who made this impenetrable tent. Chigusa revealed that the reason she was in his shelter was that she didn't expect the Divine Tree Forest to be full of such powerful monsters. What's even worse is that her power, dark magic, doesn't mix well with the forest or its inhabitants at all. Suddenly, she started vibrating at the speed of light as the dam finally broke. Chigusa broke down, relating how a lot of things had happened these last 4 years. For one, she couldn't believe a gloomy person like her would become popular in another world with the help of magic. As a result, she spent the last few years running around doing errands, but she got caught up in court politics, which was a pretty complicated topic. She went on rambling about everything that happened, so Soujirou had to cut her off to calm her down. To sum it up, Chigusa ran away from the demon bear once she entered the divine tree forest and hid in Soujirou's shelter. She was just trying to wash her underwear, but who would have thought the demon bear was a pretty aggressive haposai? Enough about Chigusa, isn't Soujirou's weapon too powerful? After all, it took down the bear and Chigusa's tentacles in just one hit. At that, Soujirou explained that it's actually a divine tool that helped him create the shelter. A far cry from Chigusa's cheat ability, dark magic high affinity. Since she can't do what Soujirou does, Chigusa has decided to attach herself to his shelter, saying she'll make it her second home. That's when Soujirou stepped in, saying he actually went there to dismantle the shelter. Upon hearing that, Chigusa threw a semi-fit, semi-panic since the shelter itself is pretty powerful. According to Chigusa, the shelter ate a demon beast, and as for her, she can't exactly go home. To make matters worse, her food supply is running out, so she thinks she'll be a goner sooner rather than later. Soujirou could only facepalm at this kid. Food running out is one thing, but it would be hard for her if dehydration started. In fact, it could even kill her. He can't exactly leave her out here, so in the end, he asked Chigusa if she would like to live with them at their campsite. It was a no-brainer. Chigusa agreed instantly, of course. Once Soujirou dismantled the shelter, they made their way back to the campsite. On the way back, Soujirou asked more about Chigusa, like her skills and title. She quickly obliged, explaining that the title Chigusa ni Nantoka is derived from the technique Chigusa Shadow Manipulation Spell. In their world, it's pretty common to abbreviate things. For her, dark magic can do a lot, but Soujirou remained quiet. After all, he remembered Sidek saying the most dangerous magician in the world is among them, but he never expected her to be a crying and anxious mess. Screw that, Chigusa's barely breathing with the amount of walking they've done. In the end, Musubi had to carry her all the way to the campsite. Once they reached the area, Matsukaze welcomed Soujirou with lots of kisses. He thanked Ukitama for keeping watch of their base as the latter clung to Soujirou's leg. Seeing the two cute and fluffy creatures instantly brightened the gloomy Chigusa. Soujirou introduced her to his fluffy companions, but Matsukaze got too excited and smacked her so hard that she ended up on the ground. To say that Chigusa was shocked to see two structures at the campsite was an understatement. The girl nearly had her eyes popping and her jaw on the floor, seeing that there was actual proof of human settlement there, in the middle of the divine tree forest. If possible, she turned to Soujirou and looked at him more incredulously than before, saying that only gods can use the magical trees and push through the beasts in the forests. But Soujirou points out that Chigusa is also knowledgeable about other worlds, which made her blush a little. But from the looks of it, the girl had it rough, seeing how excited she is from seeing a dining table set like it's the pinnacle of human civilization. Soujirou was about to make tea, briefly explaining how the beverage was done via mixing and boiling some herbs in the area, when Chigusa's mouth hung open once again at the mention of a toilet. She's so happy with that alone, but Soujirou informed her that they have no toilet paper, hence the use of leaves instead. That's when Chigusa told him that she had that. The way she switched up from being bubbly to sullen happened so fast. Suddenly, a dark portal opened as Chigusa conjured paper from the shadows. She hands it to Soujirou, explaining there are a lot of things they can store in the shadows, but it's not much use here. After all, if she hid any expensive pieces of jewelry inside, she'd be suspected of smuggling, which in turn can lead to her magic being appraised. She learned the hard way from experience, losing pretty much everything she had after a lord of a certain town accused her of such. When it comes to buying food, they also have to apply through the guild since it regulates everything. With the way the system is set up, the only way to get your stuff is through bribery, something many adventurers have adapted to. Even Soujirou knows the game, but he just kept his mouth shut. Chigusa continued saying that having connections is crucial in their world, but no one even taught her about it. Seeing she's already murking, Soujirou decided to lighten up the mood by sharing that an elf lives with him, and that this elf will be back in 3 days. Since this elf is a woman, he thinks Chigusa would feel more at ease and even guides Chigusa to the village. That's when the dam finally broke free. Chigusa started bawling her eyes out, saying she didn't want to return to the village or work anymore. Instead of judging her, Soujirou sympathized with Chigusa, knowing he was also a workaholic and had no one to turn to. It's a grim reminder of how he was never rewarded despite working hard and receiving unreasonable treatment. But looking at Chigusa now, Soujirou realized that she's been going through the same things he did at a much younger age, which amplified his pity for her. With tears in her eyes, she continues about how it's getting harder to eat lately because of how bad the food tastes. With that, Soujirou finally told her that she can just stay with them. He'll even build a house for her. In exchange, she could just help him out with some other kinds of stuff, especially about their world. Is he for real? Would he really be okay with that? Especially since Chigusa can't really think of anything useful? Does Soujirou want her to become his stool or something? Chigusa really thought he'd use her for furniture, so Soujirou had to clarify that what he wanted to utilize was her magic. After all, her tentacles were able to stop the demon bear. Not to mention being able to store items in the shadows is a handy skill and something he couldn't do. Those two praises alone were enough to lift her spirits up. But back to the point. Since he can't use magic, Soujirou wants her to stay and help around their campsite, on top of helping him in learning more about the magic in this world. Once that was settled, they started to eat Soujirou's home-cooked meal and talked about the other resident of the campsite. Chigusa said that if this elven woman is as bright as the sun, then she might have to stay in the dark. Soujirou found that peculiar, but if anything, he hopes Misty's return can help both of them learn about other important things in this world. But anyway, Soujirou asked Chigusa if she could help him out with some things after their meal, which she was more than happy to do. While Soujirou created a new pot, Chigusa was in charge of fetching the herbs for their dinner. For dinner, Soujirou cooked the fish they caught in the river with herbs and wild greens, making it savory and flavorful. At the first whiff of the dish, Chigusa almost cried again because it was the first time she had had a proper meal in 4 years. She shared stories about the world, which got Soujirou a little shocked given how the palace doesn't even have dishes of the same caliber as his cooking. According to her, fruits were the only tasty ones, gobbling up Soujirou's home-cooked meal as she said so. She asked for seconds, and the latter was more than happy to feed her more. After they've eaten, Soujirou showed Chigusa the tent she made for him. It was a rushed job, so it's pretty simple, but the latte didn't mind. According to her, the shelter he made before was comfortable enough, so the tent along with the blankets is more than enough for her. Soujirou couldn't help but ask how she managed to sleep all this time. Since heat comes from above and the cold comes from the ground, she had to have some kind of insulation, right? Chigusa just used her dark magic and wrapping herself in darkness while nestled inside her blankets, which is kinda pathetic. Soujirou pitied the girl, but at least she has a better sleeping place now. Before he went to his hut, he added that the area is warded against monsters so she can sleep soundly tonight. Before he walked off, Chigusa thanked him again, a sentiment Soujirou echoed because she thought him more about this world. And as embarrassing as it is, she had to ask what his name was, panicking because she didn't catch it the first time. Soujirou told her his name and told her to drop the honorifics. It's been a long time since she talked this much, which had her throat hurting, and that's how Soujirou found himself a third resident in his campsite. The next morning, Soujirou woke up thanks to Matsukaze's lick-tongue attacks. She wished Misty a good morning upon instinct, and remembered that his elven friend hadn't returned yet. Now that he realized it, the place seemed lonelier without her there. But Soujirou decided to brush it off to wash his face. That's when he heard a panicked scream from Chigusa's tent, telling Soujirou she's awake and apologizing for sleeping in despite being a low-ranking member. Like Soujirou, Chigusa woke up all wet and sticky because of Matsukaze's attack. She was so distressed that she forgot what it was like to greet another person with a good morning. Seeing Soujirou stretching, she asks if he's doing the radio exercises popular back then, so the former invites her to do a light stretching session with him. After doing so, Soujirou suggested they go for a little swim, but not before asking Chigusa if she had any spare clothes. Musubi was nice enough to fix her uniform last night, but if it wasn't too much to ask, poor Chigusa shyly asked if she could also have a pair of panties made for her since Demon Bear Happosai took them yesterday. The two of them headed to the river, where Soujirou handed Chigusa a makeshift soap made from the griffin's hook claws. He explained that it has cleansing properties and pointed Chigusa to a certain area where she could wash freely. But no sooner had she taken her clothes off, the girl crashed out, wondering if she could wash freely in her birthday suit with Soujirou just a few meters away. While she was panicking, Soujirou stood still in his position, thinking that Chigusa really had to take a bath. She was giving off BO, but he couldn't exactly tell that to her face. Plus, Chigusa should make herself more presentable when she meets Misty later on. After bathing, Soujirou took it upon himself to brush her hair. Chigusa thought he was being considerate, but in reality, Soujirou just really wanted to check if she had any lice, or worse, fleas. He was hell-bent on making a good impression for Misty, hoping she would take Chigusa in without issue. Speaking of clean, even Chigusa was surprised that Soujirou doesn't smell like an old man. In his defense, he just wants to keep a nice living space for everyone, aside from being hygienic, of course. Now for today's agenda, Soujirou wants to build a cabin, which means he needs wooden logs for it. Since there are 3 of them now, he plans to make a bigger cabin where all 3 of them can live together, while the other houses will serve as the shed. While he was busy mulling over what to do, Chigusa approached him and offered to help out. But can she handle manual labor? No problem. Although she's mainly a dark magic user, there are also a couple of helpful things she can do, like make objects float. With that, she starts making the logs float while Soujirou works on them, shaving, cutting, and making them ideal building materials. He also has Chigusa store the finished logs in the shadow space. His work is already cut out thanks to craft gear, while the transportation time got shorter thanks to Chigusa's dark magic. They took a short break just when they were about to assemble the cabin because poor Chigusa couldn't keep up. Although she can make the objects lighter, she still needs to exert effort and push them in certain directions, and Chigusa exerted more today than in the last 4 years. They resumed work soon after, and although Chigusa managed to hand him a piece of lumber, it was evident that the poor girl was exhausted. At that, Soujirou asked if it would be easier for her if she used the dark tentacles instead. Lo and behold, it worked. Assembling the cabin from the frameworks to the wall panels, roof, and exterior walls went by like a breeze. Because Chigusa has a good grasp of the tentacles, assembling the cabin made it so much easier for them. And before long, they finally finished building the cabin. She was so happy seeing the cabin done, looking at Soujirou with so much respect and calling him a magician, but the latter said it was all thanks to her. Soujirou thanked her much to her surprise, saying that if she wasn't there, then they wouldn't be able to build the cabin at all. Now that they're done, chow time. Their menu for tonight was bear stew, the same Haposai demon bear that Soujirou smacked last chapter. Since they were too busy working on the cabin, they weren't able to hunt, which left them with bear meat for dinner. Sojirou's mind kept wandering back to Misty, since he knows she'll be back by tomorrow morning. Looking at Chigusa right now, he thought he needed to explain to Misty their whole situation. Though in his heart, he hoped that his elven friend would accept Chigusa without any issues, or so he thought. Soujirou was far too optimistic the next day. He didn't expect Misty to draw her blades against a frightened Chigusa. The next morning, Chigusa tries her hand at fishing using her dark tentacles. She managed to catch one, hurling it high in the air only to smack the poor creature. Soujirou watched from the side, asking why she won't catch it by the hand. It was simple, it was gross, and there's no way Chigusa is touching that with her bare hands. Well, if that were the case, why try fishing in the first place, right? For one, Chigusa wanted to be useful today, so she thought she could contribute by doing the fishing. She managed to levitate the fish in midair and was about to grill it using her dark tentacles by casting it straight into the fire. Soujirou almost lost it right then, so it was a good thing Chigusa managed to snag the fish back thanks to her dark tentacles. Soujirou suggests she remove the fish's innards first to make them tastier. She had just started to do so when something struck the ground a few inches away from where Chigusa stood. Both of them froze as a voice issued a warning against Chigusa, ordering her to stop using her dark magic. It was Misty. Misty was on guard, blades drawn and eyes narrowed. She asked Soujirou if he was still of sound mind right now. She already has a barrage of questions, asking how long they were together and if he wasn't affected by dark magic. He finally stepped in, telling Misty that she got it all wrong. There was a pregnant pause before Misty looked a little sad, asking if he had been enticed by the dark magic user while he was away. With a smile, he promised he was okay, adding that Chigusa wasn't dangerous at all. Misty didn't say anything. Instead, she walked up to him and leaned her face close to his. After deducing that he was the same Soujirou from before, she finally put her guard down. As if on cue, Chigusa cried out in disgust as she held the fish in her bare hands. Misty didn't expect the former to be like this. In fact, this dark magic user is quite different from the others. There's a good reason why Misty is acting very cautious around Chigusa. You see, in their world, dark magic users' powers are rooted in faith. Their lot is pretty steadfast on inhuman beliefs like causing chaos or hurting people. Moreover, dark magic users have souls that have accumulated hidden darkness that led them to what they are, also giving them power and mental strength. When she puts it like that, Soujirou deduces that it's like believing in invisible gods from the depths of your heart. To help clear Chigusa, Soujirou explained to Misty that their new friend believes in something different, like the weekly shonen magazine. This concept may sound foreign to Misty since it's a cultural difference thingy, but she didn't probe any further. But more importantly, he finally greeted Misty with a welcome back after being separated for a few days. It was a little awkward though, but the two just laughed it off, while Chigusa was on the side, crashing out with the fish in her hand. Misty's whole demeanor made a 180-degree turn once she knew Chigusa came from the same place as Soujirou. Now she's more welcoming toward Chigusa, with the latter too blinded by Misty's aura. Soujirou also took the time to show the new cabin to Misty, with the latter even more impressed since the cabin is better made than their previous hut. She complimented the wooden panels, which helped with the cabin's insulation. He also made a bed and table that can be folded when not in use, making the room more spacious. But what's even more curious is that both Chigusa and Soujirou kept taking their shoes off when they were inside the cabin. The Japanese blood jumped out, As Soujirou explained that they did it out of habit, Misty decided to follow suit, so she took off her shoes as well, since she didn't want to feel left out. Well, he's still not finished with the entrance since there's still the threefold earth to build in the entrance hall. Outside, they also checked out the roof, which is pretty high up and wonderfully built. Chigusa explained that she helped set the timber with her dark tentacles, the two conversing comfortably to Soujirou's surprise. Although he had her help with the construction, seeing her talk animatedly like this suggests that she also enjoyed making it. Later, Misty found Soujirou doing something curious, holding a basin with some kind of liquid in it. He explained that Chigusa gave him olive oil, which they can use for cooking. He was excited to cook some local dishes from his hometown. So is Soujirou reserving this special dish for her? Obviously he was, which made Misty even more excited for it. But then again, why did Chigusa have so much oil in the first place? She had it in stock since she didn't have anything to cook. If they cooked the fish in oil, then it would become even tastier. Soujirou will be making potato starch by grinding the plants and wrapping them in cloth. He then repeatedly squeezed the cloth while in water, with the sediments making the water cloudy. Once it settles, he disregards the water and repeats this process. The remaining powder left at the bottom will become the potato starch. This potato starch will be used for this special meat that Soujirou has been marinating and saving. He sprinkles the potato starch on the deep-fried meat to create Tetsuda age. Both Misty and Chigusa beamed, it was so delicious. Chigusa even cried joyfully, eating carriage for the first time in years. Thanks to the potato starch, it produced a crispy coating when fried, with a juicy meat bursting with flavor inside. A real Food Wars moment. Soujirou suddenly remembered something, fiddling with his craft gear. A moment later, he handed Chigusa skewers on a stick. She gave a yelp, her eyes twinkling at the sight of courage on a stick. Of course, he gave Misty one too, and the two of them enjoyed eating together, something he didn't expect but hoped to see. The next day, both ladies took a bath together. Soujirou remembered how Chigusa refused to submerge her head in water, which led to Soujirou creating a bucket. Now the two ladies enjoy bathing together using Soujirou's newest craftsmanship. Soujirou's harem life is about to get really good, with both ladies wrapped in a single piece of cloth. So how do you make a bucket? Soujirou patiently explained to Chigusa the process of creating the bucket. He started with the side plates by cutting the board into 10 pieces and assembling them into a decagon, but you have to place them at a certain angle so they can be joined in the middle. From there, he cut a trapezoidal-shaped plank with the bottom part narrower before proceeding to shave it into a curved surface. He puts all of these together and uses a string to secure them in place. He cuts the top and bottom portions before smoothing the inside and outside. Next, he digs a groove on the inside and inserts the bottom plate that's cut to shape the groove. They finally have a bucket. As the final part of the process, Soujirou filed the plane to smooth it and wrapped it in a bark band before tightening it. They checked to see if there were any leaks, and when there weren't, Chigusa and Misty used it for bathing. Watching the two ladies bathing before him using an item he built left him feeling fulfilled. For Soujirou, one of the best feelings in the world is creating something useful for someone who's in trouble. He decided that he'll start building tools based on their needs, but his thought process got cut off when Chigusa mentioned how the cloth isn't thick enough. It's practically see-through. Unlike her, Misty finds the cloth refreshing. It's lightweight and smooth on the skin, all thanks to Musubi's handiwork. With the way the cloth hung on Misty's body, even Chigusa was left frozen and admiring the elven woman's physique. But more importantly, Misty called her out since Chigusa is positioned in the deeper part of the river. That's because she was trying to catch some of the fish swimming nearby. She could even catch some of these guys, relying on her dark tentacles to catch the unsuspecting fish. Misty warns her not to disturb the water too much and cause a commotion since she could attract monsters. Chigusa was just about to assure her that everything's fine when it's clearly not. The girl completely submerged into the water. Misty called out to Soujirou for help. They managed to save Chigusa just in time, but she was pretty out of it. Misty suspects that it must be one of those slime monsters, since their type is drawn to dark magic. Thanks to this incident, Soujirou's list of worries grows. This also just means that exercising caution is a must, even when bathing. Misty, on the other hand, thinks that they shouldn't get too excited since the slimes don't normally attack unless provoked. Chigusa managed to regain consciousness by now, just as Soujirou spotted something shiny not far from where they were. It's a glass bead. Well, not quite, since what Soujirou is holding is actually the cell of an evil smile. The cell is separated from the nucleus and gathers to form a sphere. Because of its smooth texture, some people buy it, which is also a pretty easy way for beginner adventurers to earn money. Misty explains further that if the glass beads didn't have a nucleus, then they would be pretty harmless. But if there are, then the possibility of them gathering and creating a large body could spell trouble since slimes stick together. Fighting an individual slime is okay, but fighting a colony is pretty troublesome. The only way to defeat them is to crush the nuclei. Just then, someone smashes the glass beads with a rock, and of course, it's Chigusa. The poor girl was traumatized, smashing them before they could join together. That's when Soujirou noticed that they become smaller orbs once the nucleus is crushed, which he decided to keep. This world sure is filled with interesting materials and creatures. Misty, on the other hand, bans Chigusa from using dark magic while they're bathing in the river. Just then, Ukatama appeared in front of them, and a second Ukatama appeared. It's like the divine beast became a slime. Misty got all giddy upon knowing that it's Ukatama's child. Although they look identical, Soujirou can identify which is Ukatama and the other one is Kotama. To make differentiating them easier, Misty decided to put a ribbon on the other right before she went hunting with Matsukaze. Chigusa low-key commented on Misty's girl hobby of putting a ribbon, which the latter took offense to. Suddenly, Misty became a blabbering mess, explaining why tying a ribbon is a good idea for them to differentiate the two Ukatamas. Suddenly, both ladies are over-explaining themselves to each other, so in the end, Misty caved in and admitted her embarrassing hobby of putting ribbons. She just hopes Chigusa keeps it a secret from Soujirou, but too late, he already heard it all. Well, he overheard everything because he decided to intervene in case Chigusa and Misty fought. Besides, Soujirou already knew about the ribbon from before, and yes, he also finds it endearing. Being the good guy that he is, Soujirou assures Misty that it's okay to like the things she likes. If anything, he thinks liking cute stuff suits Misty a lot. Hearing him say that made Misty go beet red. To mask her feelings of embarrassment, she smacks Soujirou's shoulder like every shy maiden in shoujo manga. She tells off Soujirou, reminding him that he's a divine being, so flirting with others is a no-no. Misty then runs off with Matsukaze for their daily hunting, while Soujirou is left clueless and massaging his shoulder. Now where is Chigusa? The sullen girl ran off to the woods, thinking she had failed both Soujirou and Misty, so she took it upon herself to gather some wild herbs as an apology for them, hoping it's enough to not get her kicked out of the campsite. Chigusa waltzed in just as Soujirou was talking aloud about his upcoming projects, like an outdoor barbecue area, wishing for concrete so they have a stronger building material. Chigusa cut in and handed Soujirou the herbs with her head down, asking not to be exiled. Of course she won't be. Sojirou's mind was thinking of miwatsushi, the flooring used for the entrance of Japanese homes. Chigusa's more surprised that he could make a building material like that. Soujirou notes that he got most of the materials down save for slaked lime and eggshells. She suggested they check out bird nests, but what will they do about the egg's contents? Do they eat it? Soujirou thinks it's best to just break them since the insides could be a yolk or maybe half-hatched, leaving Chigusa grossed out again. It took a while to get her to calm down, and he decided that they'll just cross that bridge when they get there. His priority right now is to maintain the image of their outdoor area and make sure that they're protected from the natural elements. Chigusa couldn't help but hear him talk about their campsite with such consideration made her comment on how Soujirou is so passionate about these kinds of things. To be frank, Soujirou told her that presentation and looking good are important, especially when it involves eating. If one stops caring about these details, then it's like eating crap, which is a pretty exaggerated take. Plus, Chigusa would be happier in a better surrounding, right? He's right, but Chigusa's more interested in that smaller house he erected over there. Soujirou said he created the small hut to enshrine a deity, though he hasn't performed a groundbreaking ceremony yet. He wanted to create a small shrine for the deity, and even took great efforts to practice making a roof. The more he thought about it, the more the structure started to resemble a small house. Ultimately, Soujirou gave up midway, but at least he had a cute-looking birdhouse. Plus, it was good practice for his part. Misty suddenly appeared, curious as to what the two were talking about when she laid her eyes on the small house. Chigusa filled her in, saying Soujirou used it as practice for when he needs to make a real house eventually. Misty got all excited, asking where her room or Chigusa's room was. This left the latter flustered because Chigusa's okay with living in the attic or something. Matsukaze appeared suddenly and barked at Misty, reminding her why she was there in the first place. Now that she remembered it, Misty actually caught a big one and she needs help carrying it back. Soujirou suggests she take Chigusa while he prepares their haul for dissection. With that, the two ladies left while Soujirou got ready to prepare dinner. Suddenly, a voice sounded welcoming Soujirou and calling him Legaria Master. He quickly looked around asking who it was when he noticed the door of the small cabin open. Then, out came the prettiest and daintiest creature Soujirou laid his eyes on, a fairy. That is the end of the recap at chapter 14. Please read the pinned comment about the next part.